Hey guys, thanks so much for stopping by. My name's Austin. Today we are taking a look at the Mess Toys 1/12 Ultimate Neighbor action figure. Mess Toys is a third-party designer that has been kind of doing a run recently of the Reveltech 2.0 Spider-Man in different sculpts and designs to match with different designs for the character. This is their most recent release. I believe it's the third of three. He is obviously the superior Spider-Man, which the name is kind of funny to me because Ultimate Spider-Man obviously is a different character. So, not sure why they didn't just go with superior neighbor. Maybe they figured that was just a little bit too close to what he is in the comics. But, anyways, I want to get straight into it because there is quite a bit, as you can see, to go over on this guy, and it's very exciting. I'm really looking forward to getting into the nitty gritty on this and seeing just how well they did on this version of the character, especially because I don't have a superior Spider-Man in my collection. I was kind of waiting for this guy to really see how he turned out, and I think he turned out pretty good. So before we get into the actual figure himself, we'll just take a look at the packaging real quick. Move that really nice stand out of the way. The packaging is super simple. It does a great job of showing you what the character is. It doesn't have any kind of window or anything for obvious reasons. It doesn't have any images of the figure. They have to be very careful as this is not a licensed production. But it still does a great job of, like, on the shelf telling you right off the bat who this is, what this is. And it's also just really clean art. I really do like it. Sometimes Reveltech has been a little bit more in recent years a little bit generic with their packaging, kind of too simple. Sometimes in the past, a little bit too crazy. Mayfex does a great job with their designs, but there's a lot going on. This kind of has its own visual style that I guess is probably closest to, like, I'm thinking Mezco, but I feel like it's just because it has that, like, Mezco styling down there. But anyways, packaging is good. It's simple. The only big downside is obviously it doesn't say the character's name, so doesn't work super well for that. But anyways, that's enough about the box that it comes in. We're going to get that thrown out of here, and then we'll talk about the figure himself. Getting into the aesthetics on this figure, they are, I mean, honestly, the figure speaks for itself. There's not much that I need to say about it. There is obviously the overall silhouette of the Reveltech design, which I know is a little bit contentious for me personally. I talked about this in my Scarlet Spider review that should be popping up shortly if I'm smart enough to remember that I said this when I was recording this. Um, I personally really love the Reveltech look. I like anime, and I like my superheroes to be superheroic. And while, yes, this is very much, extremely closed in waist, broad shoulders, it's not a very realistic look for a character. It is comic booky. And for a character like Superior Spider-Man, this is kind of a heavier duty design, and I think it works very well with Superior because he is kind of that more imposing dude. I will say I don't think it looks bad on a regular Spider-Man. I don't think it looked bad on Scarlet or Symbiote, which obviously, those are also more intimidating. Anyways, my point is, this is a very versatile look that I think works. It's athletic, it's lithe, but it's heroic. It looks like a comic book character. For me, the breaking up of the sculpt is something that doesn't really bother me when it comes to action figures if it's not, egregiously done. For me, this is not egregious. I would say the biggest issue with sculpting is these little knee pads that jut off. I don't fully know why they did this like this, and this is a Reveltech thing. I do think Mess Toys could have probably adjusted it, but I just don't really know what the reason was for it originally, because it's not like a full knee. Like, it doesn't really look like a knee when it's straight up. It kind of always looks like a little protuberance, if you will. But anyways, other than that, everything else works super well for me. The backpack looks great. It's in its own kind of metallic finish, and it's not like a molded metallic. It looks like it's actually painted on there. Another thing, the webbing is super clean and really, really well done. It's incredible how good they did. Well, you can see a little bit of the wash kind of not being fully cleaned up, so not 100% perfect. Obviously, you can kind of get away with that with this more messy webbing design. But speaking of the messy webbing design, these tight lines, they're super well picked out. they show up so well, and I think it's just because of how good the wash was. And while it does result in you getting some kind of maybe a little bit of messiness in some areas, I think that it's worth it for the finished product because of just how clean this is. It is such a pretty looking figure. I would say probably the biggest question is going to be the eyes. I kind of think of Superior Spider-Man as having like black reflective eyes, which when you put this up to a light source, you do get kind of a reflective sheen. But I will say it mostly just looks like he has blacked out lenses. I think it's a really cool effect. I think it does a good job. I do think it would have been cool if we had gotten a head sculpt similar to the one that we get with the Marvel Legends release that kind of had like the reflection painted on. I thought that was a really neat effect from that figure, despite the fact that I didn't pick him up. From the reviews that I saw, it seemed really neat. But they did a great job with this. You can see that it is a silvery kind of reflective black that works really well when you put a light source on it. So, yeah, aesthetically, I think it's great. This little detail on his wrist gauntlet, super well picked out in red. Just, I mean, exceptionally well done. Jumping over to the accessories to kind of talk about a little bit of the aesthetic. This head sculpt as well. I'm not familiar with where this came from. If somebody knows, please let me know in the comments. It's a great looking Peter head. It does have a little beauty mark there, which I think is just a paint issue because the other unmasked-ish head doesn't feature that, so I don't think they intentionally put a little Eva Mendes mole right there. But my big problem with it, aside from the paint mishaps, because he does have a little bit of silver there on the forehead, which shouldn't be too easy to clean off, but the hair's very dark, and I kind of get where they were coming from with it because it is kind of the dark Peter Parker, but it doesn't fully. I don't know. I'm conflicted because it's like it doesn't fully look like Peter, but it's also not really supposed to look like Peter. So I think it overall works super well as a Superior Spider-Man head sculpt. But if you wanted to take this off and put it onto one of your other, Revoltech styled Spider-Man or any other Spider-Man, I think it's going to stick out just a touch because of the color of the head. But other than that, super well done. Really love the aesthetics on the unmasked head, the half-masked head, and the full-masked head. All of it super good. Really well picked out red. The detail work on this is just insanely good. I'm so happy with it for the price point of about $30. So that's all I've got for aesthetics. Hopefully I didn't drone on too long about my praises for this figure. Next up, we will look at those accessories. Speeding through the accessories that you kind of expect to get with this guy, the hands all have a sculpted kind of stabby claw bit, which makes me excited at the prospective 2099 release. I don't think that we've gotten any kind of confirmation of that, but these would be great to reuse for Miguel. But they also just work super well on Superior, and they look great. The red is well sculpted. This is kind of the expressive sort of lunging hand. I believe these are all the same, like, stylized hands that we got. It's just that they've been, touched up with a stabby bit. So they seem the same as Scarlet, but this is another hand. All of these you get a set of each, so that's cool. This is kind of, I guess it's also grabby, just another gesturing hand. I appreciate the number of gestures that Revoltech and by extension Mess Toys have included. This is kind of the relaxed, not really doing anything, just in a static pose hand. A lot of different stuff you can do with this kind of hand, really like it. Then you have what I would consider kind of like a leaping through the air, kind of an acrobatic gesture. Not quite relaxed, but not angry, Really like this. Love it for multiple different poses, very effective. Then you get the ever classic web swinging or web thwipping hands, and these I want to talk about real quick because I love the way that Revoltech and by extension Mess Toys does their thwipping hands. Since we've got the fists, they double as web swinging, grabbing, holding hands, whatever. They have a little dot in them. I'm just realizing I took off the wrong hand, but no, I didn't. I don't know my left from my right, I guess. American education system. The way that this pegs on, it goes straight through to the index finger, and it creates such a stylized look. It's just gorgeous. I really can't get over how they do this. I wish that it was a more standard practice in action figures. I think it looks great. It's very effective. It also has that little peg hole for where you can put in the web shot accessory, the web line that we'll talk about in a little bit. But that's it for the hands, except for your wall crawling hands, which again are very well designed to have like, and this is the benefit that you get from, okay, they are kind of tough to put on, which is a little bit disappointing, but they're not terrible. This is the benefit that you get for having multiple different types of like expressive hands. Marvel Legends, you kind of just have to accept that the wall crawling hands are also going to be like leaping, grabbing, angry, whatever. You know, they're the kind of expressive hand. This is not, there is no punches pulled on this being a wall crawling hand. It's flattened out. It looks great. It looks especially good with the clawed tips. I love the look of this. And again, the paintwork is so clean. Really love all of the hand accessories that we get. Again, pretty sure this is standard fare for all of the Revoltech and Mess Toys Spider-Man, but well done for the superior Spider-Man design. Let's bring the head back out just to kind of talk about it a little bit. Really love the detail put into the sculpt. Obviously, there's a little bit of cut there that's kind of necessary to get the range of motion that you need for a Revoltech figure, but it's very clean, very well done. Love the skin tone. Really do like this unmasked head, except for, like I said, that beauty mark. He's not Eva Mendes. And then, you know, this is pretty specific to Superior because the hair is darker. So it's not going to work great on like a different Peter, unless you wanted to repaint it, which wouldn't be impossible. Then you get this, the half-masked head sculpt, which is super cool. Really, really like this. I won't profess to being a master of Superior Spider-Man. I don't remember if this is like a key design for him. I don't really care either way, though, honestly. It's just really cool to have it. I really do like any kind of half-masked sculpt. They always look fun. They always give you some options. And, yeah, they're really, really good. Again, well painted, well sculpted. Everything is showing through good on the kind of messy web lines that I do really love about Superior's design. Next up, we have the web lines. You get 2 of these. They're not painted at all, just sculpted in white plastic. They look fine for what they are. They're not really treading any new ground here. They have the little peg. You attach it into the actual hand, which I'll be honest is not my favorite method. I still prefer the rings. I think it just works a little bit better. These don't seat in perfectly well. Although these are better than the Scarlet was, but they're fine. It's just kind of funny that it like sticks out like that, and you can't angle the wrist down, which is what I really prefer on a Spider-Man. I like when the thwip can, if this makes sense, like the lines coming out of the wrist and the hand is like straight back. But anyways, other thing, you can put it into the fist and he'll be able to hold it, which it looks like they did a lot better on this one than they did on the Scarlet Spider, which wasn't bad, but it had a little bit of a weak grip. This one has a much better handle on it. In fact, yeah, you can pretty easily suspend him from it, and obviously he's gonna articulate a little bit when you shake it, but other than that, very well done. Very happy with that, aside from maybe a lack of paint. Speaking of a lack of paint, you have these. They're fine. They're very solid. It would have been nice to have a little bit of a wash, or maybe even make these translucent, since it is supposed to be like a net almost. I like this sculpt, but it doesn't work perfectly for me on the blank white. I like it a lot more on the regular, like Revoltech 2.0. I think it's a better effect, but these can also peg into the hand. You don't get the kind of web wing style, which I think the web wings on the 2.0 were different anyways, but they don't peg into the back. So if for some reason you were trying or hoping that you'd be able to do the web wings, you can't. It's too wide. So I don't know if anybody was planning on doing that, but just so you're aware. Then we get to the star of the show by far, the Waldos or the Ock tentacles or the spider legs, whatever you want to call them. These are so well done, and with the Marvel Legends version being fresh in my mind from that Magic Wave, they're so cool. The sculpting on this comes to that kind of fish hook point, which looks great. Each individual one is stabby and awesome, and you've got that Yamaguchi style ball peg, which I guess is really just an import style ball peg. It's not anything crazy, but it's what they use. So each individual limb of the leg can articulate however you want. Both sides can rotate. You've got so many options, and I can confirm when you put all 4 of them on to the figure, it's probably going to be in my conclusion video, the pose that I put them in, it can stand on the legs. So that is something that I think really tests the mettle of an Iron Spider-esque, or a Waldo Spider-Man. It's so cool that we have one that can do that. The legs are stiff and strong. You do have to be careful, make sure you don't break anything, but they are so good at what they do. They're creepy. They look like superior. They're just great. I really can't get over how good they did on these arms. And you get 4 of them, all have the same level of articulation, all have the same crispy candy red paint. It's so good. Just I really do love these. Anyways, gushing aside, all done with that. That is all that you get in terms of accessories for him. Perfectly fine for me for a $30 figure. Originally more expensive, but I don't think that there's really much else you could ask for with everything that you get. It's pretty. Oh, I forgot. I have a bonus thing. I dropped him earlier and completely forgot about him. You get a little spider buddy. These are super neat. I don't know if they're exactly how they look like in the comic. They look like the Marvel Spider-Man 1 video game design, but those probably were just copying from the comic. So this is great. It looks awesome. I would imagine they probably took this sculpt from the Figuarts Spider-Man figure that was absolutely terrible from that video game, but really love it. Well painted, well sculpted. You might not be able to see it super clearly, but it has matte black for the eyes that really stick out well against the metallic red. So just another really well done accessory that I don't think anybody would have faulted them for not including, but the fact that they did really makes this a superior Spider-Man figure, and it shows that Mess Toys is really thinking about their releases and they are putting a lot of effort into them. Speaking of effort, before I move on to the accessories, I have one more thing to gush about. I just really love how clearly the red shows through on the fists. They didn't have to paint that in, but they did, and it's so clean and it's so good. And it's just perfect. And accessories are incredibly well done. So now let's get on to the articulation. Jumping into the articulation now, which, as anybody knows with a Yamaguchi Revoltech figure, is always a standout, and no different here. To be honest, if you've already seen my Scarlet Spider video, which if I can link it again, I'll put it up there, I'm going to be going over very similar stuff, so I'm going to be kind of quick with it, a little bit faster than I normally am with my articulation, but anyways, we'll go straight into it. The head is on the standard kind of double ball peg setup. You can look up that far, which is perfect. You can look down that far. This is a perfect example of how you do a double ball peg and how you make it just as expressive as a hinge joint, but yet still just as natural. This looks way cleaner, and it looks so good. Then when you want to engage the neck, can bury it that much more, even more natural, selling the effect even more. Then you want to look up, bring it all the way back, and you do get a lot of gapping. I don't personally display mine like this. I don't think it really adds much to the figure to do it like this. I mean, you're kind of getting just a touch more. It works better for like a wall crawling pose where you might not really notice that gap as much, but I would say that this is more so useful for, the dipping forward. Anyways, so yeah, very expressive head. Moving on, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be fast. I'm so bad about getting really yappy. So the shoulder is on that kind of standard ball peg that Yamaguchi does. He can go up that far, which is not very good until you realize that you can just articulate it around and pretty much get whatever you need out of it. Obviously, that's all you can do without kind of the rotation, but you can pretty much work with it, and it's going to give you what you need. So very effective there. He does have a bicep swivel, which makes me think that the Scarlet Spider one probably does as well, and it was just very stuck out of the box. But really glad to see that. It's cut a little bit funny, I will say, but it's there and it's effective, and it's just another point of articulation that I think this figure really didn't even necessarily need, but benefits from. Then you have another kind of import style peg or ball peg for the elbow. Very, very deep bend, really effective there. And you also do get a swivel on both ends. Depending on what you're trying to do, you're gonna get it. You're gonna do whatever you need to do with that ball peg. It's very expressive. Then getting down to the wrist, as expected, same setup. We see this on pretty much any import. It can go up and down or side to side depending on how you orient it. It's a little bit fidgety sometimes, but it's giving you way more range and versatility than any other setup. So everybody's pretty familiar with that. But good articulation in the arms. Then getting down to the chest, you do have the kind of Revoltech style butterfly joint. Yeah, butterfly joint. Goodness. It doesn't go back probably quite as far as the other releases because they had to put the backpack on. But really, I mean, when you look at that, I don't think you need much more than that, especially when you're considering like having the spider arms and everything. And then the forward is what you'd expect. He can really crunch in. Weirdly enough, this side, no, they're the same. Yeah, I think they're the same. No, it seems like this one's right. This one seems like it's kind of not going in as much as the other one. I don't know. You can play with it and probably get it a little bit deeper, but even then, do you really need it? You can definitely get a bodybuilder pose where he's gonna crunch his chest in, and very effective. You get a ball peg there at the beginning of the abs. That diaphragm is going to go back that far and go forward very, very far. Then you get down to the waist, and the waist has a little overlay that just keeps it natural, keeps it from having any kind of breakages in the sculpt unnecessarily. And he can go that far with just the waist, but then that far with both. And again, just super clean, no breakages happening. Very, very well sculpted. Then he can go forward neutral, or with the diaphragm neutral, he can go forward that far on a waist crunch. And then he can, again, super natural, no breakages, very clean. There's maybe there's a slight gap there, but it's all blacked out, so you're not really going to notice anything. Very natural feeling, really looks just great. Love the articulation on this guy. Then you get to the part of the articulation that I would say is the weakest for pretty much every Revoltech figure. It's very unfortunate. The legs can, if you finagle them and finesse them, you can get them into like a perfect split. It's just that it's like a weird kind of, it feels like it's a cheated split. So that's how you get that far. You can kick forward, and it's just an odd setup. You can probably kind of tell why it's so odd, but it has these little kicks from the thigh that I'm not a huge fan of. He does kick forward plenty far. You're going to be able to use that for whatever you need. He can even kick back a touch, a little bit. It's just, it doesn't feel good to work with. I don't like the way that they do their thighs. But anyways, he can kick back very slightly, hardly at all, so nothing to write home about. He has the very weird thigh cut that can be used to kind of limited effect, I would say. It's just kind of a natural. I don't want to harp on it too much. I think if you know Revoltech, you know about that joint. Pretty much everybody who is a fan of Revoltech is not a fan of that joint. Then you get down to the knee. It is a single jointed knee, but look at that bend. This is probably the best sales pitch for a single jointed knee. It's very natural, very clean the whole way through. It locks into place, looks clean. It's just a great, simple design that, I mean, you can't ask for much more. Then you get a very interesting boot cut that is more of a ball peg. It swivels, but it also kind of kicks forward and back, so you get just an extra little bit if you needed to for some reason. I'm not going to complain about extra articulation, especially when it doesn't really mess up the sculpt. With a Spider-Man figure that doesn't have like boot cut in the actual costume, it's not quite as clean, but it doesn't bother me at all. I still think it looks great. And obviously, this Spider-Man would still need a cut somewhere in his costume for the boots, unless he's wearing like. I think all Spider-Men are wearing onesies anyways. I don't even know if they put boots on. It seems like it changes for every design. Anyways, I'm getting lost in the weeds again. Down at the ankle, very expressive back, not quite as much forward. In fact, hardly any forward, which again is kind of just a nature of the Revoltech design. It's not a huge deal, but it is kind of something that they could stand to improve. Then you can pivot super far to one side, not quite as far to the other, but still you're getting pretty much whatever you need out of it. And obviously it can swivel as much as you need it to. Then he does have the weird toe articulation that I personally am not a big fan of. It's not necessarily unnatural, but it does have that little kick out if you can see it. It's not my favorite, but it works. It's also a little bit loose on my copy. Also, if you want to, you can make him into a Gundam that feet folded, so that's super cool. I don't know. Toe articulation is, if you have been watching my videos, you'll know it's not a big deal for me at all. I don't really even like it on figures as far as like needing it to be structural. I like it more for just versatility in poses, and I'm really only going to be using it with a figure stand, which this figure comes with, which I actually don't think I covered in accessories, so here it is. It's a really good figure. Oh, you know what? I'm covering it in articulation because it has points of articulation. That's why I'm not an idiot. I know what I'm doing. It has a bendy wire stand that is super good for getting whatever you need out of it. Same thing that came on the Scarlet Spider, and I'm assuming on the black suit, which I never did manage to get. And then you have Simple Claw, which does a good job, grabs the figure, it does what a stand does. But I'm covering it in articulation because it has points of articulation, and that's really smart, and I'm really smart. And I definitely didn't just completely forget about it, as I am wont to do. That is it for articulation. He is perfect. For Spider-Man, I think he does everything that you want. The only knocks against him are the weird thighs, which aren't necessarily a hindrance or a limitation. They're kind of just more an encumbrance, and I'm just not a huge fan of messing with them. And then the toes, which are a little bit looser than I would like, but overall sculpted pretty well. So that's all for articulation. Now we'll jump into the comparisons. Full disclosure, I recorded the other segments before this. I was planning on recording a more in-depth comparison segment after I was able to go to my house or to my office rather, and bring some figures back to my house. I decided that this review is more important to just go ahead and get out and available for you guys. So this is kind of a much more abbreviated, inferior comparison segment. So I do apologize for that, but I don't think it's a big deal because you can kind of tell this guy stacks up with Marvel Legends perfectly fine. The big difference is just going to be his sculpt is obviously more larger than life, and Marvel Legends tends to lean towards a more human sculpt rather than being, the kind of superheroic proportions of a comic book character. But he does work well in terms of scaling, and he scales well with other imports as well. He's pretty much in scale with a Revoltech figure. So if you have any of those, if you have like a Mafex, going to scale a little bit smaller. Mezco, I think, scales a little bit smaller. But Figuarts also scales a little bit smaller. But yeah, Revoltech is generally on the larger side of the 1/12th scale market, but that doesn't really cause a problem for me personally. I prefer my figures to be a little bit bigger. I think perfect scale for me is Mafex, but that's just because I'm primarily a Mafex collector, other than I guess Marvel Legends, just if you consider quantity. But yeah, I think this guy fits in perfectly with your Legends display, aside from the sculpt work. So that's all I've got, and we'll go ahead and jump into the conclusion now. So see you then. Wrapping up my review now on the Mess Toys 1/12th Ultimate Neighbor. Get this guy. As promised, he stands on all 4 of his spider limbs. He can even balance on 3, which is really exciting if they do a comic book Iron Spider. He's kind of slanted a little bit, which is mostly just me being lazy and not dialing in the pose super carefully. But I also did that not just because I'm super lazy, but also because I wanted to show that it doesn't require dialing in. Every other Iron Spider or Spider-Man with Waldos that I've had either A, cannot stand on his own spider legs, or B, takes so much effort that it gets frustrating and it's not really worth doing. Full disclosure, I will not be leaving him in this pose on my shelf. I'll probably have him in some kind of flight pose with the incredibly good flight stand that came with it. But it is a very exciting prospect that we might actually have an Iron Spider that can do the Civil War pose. The possibility of that, I really hope Mess Toys uses what they've done with this and takes it into a comic book Iron Spider design. I hope they make a Marvel Spider-Man 2 video game design. I want that. I want literally, if the creators of Mess Toys are watching this video, which I know they aren't, I will literally give you all of my money for every version of Spider-Man in this design. Revoltech created something incredibly good, and Mess Toys is now what's the word I'm looking for? I guess they're applying what Revoltech did to designs that Revoltech are probably never going to do. I have seen the reveal for the black suit, which I'll be honest looks really good. I think it was a great move on Revoltech's part to make it look more alien-like and goopy. I'm not going to be picking it up. I think Mess Toys really nailed it, and I've always kind of liked the more simple, costumey, clothy looking Spider-Man costume, and Revoltech figures are just expensive right now. And look, I'm not going to get into a whole discussion over whether or not, third-party recreations are ethical. I personally don't really care. I don't have the kind of money where I can morally grandstand about intellectual property. These are plastic pieces of history and nostalgia that I want on my shelf, and I feel a lot better about buying a Mess Toys product than like a CT Toys or any other kind of third-party bootleg rather than a original sculpt, because they did do original sculpt work on this. There is a lot of effort put into this from their design team, whoever that may be, however many people that may be. It really paid off, and I'm rambling, but it's just because of how happy I am with this release. It really is exactly what you want from a Superior Spider-Man, and I think that if Mess Toys stays on this train, they can branch off into other molds, and I tell you what, there's pretty much no height that they can't rise to if they stick to this level of quality. I do a ranking system on here. I'm not even going to list them off. I'll put it on screen. He's a perfect grade. There's no question about it. He sets a new standard. Their last release set a new standard. Their CT Toys Hush Batman set a new standard. I'm so excited for this line. It's something to be excited about in figure collecting. Everything's getting more and more expensive, and with something like this where, yes, it's not a legally authorized reproduction and blah, 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 it's something to be happy about. It's well worth the price. It's probably worth even more than what they're selling it for. I hope that they don't start increasing their prices without good reason. This guy is a little bit more expensive, I believe, than the other releases, but for what you get, I get it. There is more plastic in the box, and that is all that we are asking for as collectors. We will pay you more money if you give us the value it deserves, and this figure absolutely deserves that value. So I really hope that Mess Toys can keep on this track that they're on and continue releasing just banger after banger, because I cannot wait to see what they have in store next. So that's been my review of the Mess Toys 1/12 Ultimate Neighbor. Definitely not Superior Spider-Man. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Every view means the most to me. And I hope you guys have a good one.